Around 3 years ago, a friend asked me to develop a tool that would allow them to generate SEPA credit transfer files for electronic payments, specifically formatted for their bank. For those unfamiliar, SEPA stands for Single European Payments Area. It is a system that enables customers to make euro transfers via credit transfer or direct debit to any other location within the EU and several non-EU countries. The link, I'm sharing it below. The bank provided a document outlining the required file format, and using this I created a solution that centered around an Excel spreadsheet. Users could put their transaction details into this spreadsheet that contained checks and could link back to a pay list. I created a Python package that processed the Excel data, generating the necessary output files that were submitted to the bank for processing. I made the solution available on GitHub and kept it maintained with new requirements both from the bank as well as from my friend. I became aware that others were using the solution and I created a guide part of the GitHub on how to install it and how to use the solution. Today, I am adding a video version of the installation guide and hope that those who may not have figured out how to go along reading the text can use the video version. Enjoy. Let's go over the document that explains how to install bnkSEPA on a computer. The document I am going to refer to is part of the GitHub repo, which you can read, and I'm going to follow along. Starting from the top, the first thing we need to do is install Python and Python version 3. If you look at the documentation, the version installed and tested here was 3.10, and if I go into the Python website, let's tile these together, you will see now that the latest version is 3.13. You can try to install the latest version and it may or may not work. I haven't tried it out myself. As a rule of thumb, what I normally do is try to install the version before that. So in this case, it would be 3.12. The reason for doing that is because there are situations where the packages bnkSEPA depends on and which we will install later on might not be compatible as yet with this version. If you upgrade a version different from 3.10 and it does not work, you have to uninstall that version and try one down. I'm going to go into downloads, view full list of downloads, and I'm going to try 3.12. I click here, I click on download, and since I'm using a virtual machine that is Windows, I'm going to go for the Windows installer here. I am going to say open so that after it downloads it executes immediately, and once that happens I'm going to add python.exe to path. This way the Python interpreter is found always without me having to specify the full path in the command. Furthermore, I'm going to customize installation, and in my case I'm going to install PyLauncher for all users, making it easier to start Python. I click next. Now here I'm going to check the box install Python for all users. The default path I'm going to leave and I'm going to say install. This takes a few seconds. Python setup was successful, and here I'm asked whether I want to disable the path limit. There is a limit of 260 characters, and if you have a lot of programs installed on your computer, you might want to check this. I'm going to do it so that I'm on the safe side. I click close, and if I now go into a command terminal and I type Python version from any place, you will see that Python responds. It returns the version number. This is a bit technical. You can skip it if you're simply interested in getting the solution to work. I have Python in the search path, and that will allow it to be found. The installation, as we will see later on, assumes that Python is discoverable from the place where bnkSEPA is installed. I'm going to exit out of here. Having installed Python, the next installation is to install the Microsoft C++ build tools. Some of the packages we use here rely on this library, and even though it's straightforward, this is relatively long. So after you start it, you may want to go make yourself a cup of tea, coffee, or even have lunch. Let's get it started. Go to Microsoft Build Tools. I'm going to open this into a new tab and drag it to this side. And I'm going to click on Download Build Tools. Here again, I'm going to say open. I don't need to save it, and I'm going to click yes when it asks me for elevated privileges. It needs to get itself set up, download a few components, and once that is done, I will be asked what modules, what components I want to install. And as you can see, I want to install the desktop development of C++, which requires a bit more over 7 gig of storage. Install. Whilst downloading, I'm going to leave that and I'm going to say install. That is now started. We are now nearing the end of this installation, 100%, and here the Visual Studio build tools are ready, and we're going to move to the next stage. Next, we need to install 7-zip. To explain how 7-zip plays into the solution, I'm going to move to the end, and if you look at the diagram here, what we have our Excel SM file, which through 7-zip with a password is zipped into a zip file that is fed into the bnkSEPA solution, which finally creates the relative outputs. Therefore, we need to install 7-zip. 7-zip installation is very fast. We just click the download and we say, as we did before, open. We're asked whether we want to execute this. We trust the publisher and we say install. 7-zip is ready. bnkSEPA can be installed anywhere you want. In my case, I'm going to install it on the desktop, and the first thing you need to do is go to the bnkSEPA GitHub repository, which is this one. I'm in the documentation. Let's right click here, and as we did before, we open it in a new tab. The first thing you can do is enable notifications. Now, I'm not logged in, so it's not going to work for me, but by logging in and clicking this button, you get notified every time there is a change in the code or in the documentation, and you can automatically monitor the project. Furthermore, it would help me if you gave it a star rating. It increases the awareness of the product. Having done that, we go into code and here we click download zip. This time around, rather than say open, we want to save it. So I'm going to say save as, and I'm going to put this in desktop. I'm going to say save. And if I now go into my folder, you will see that there is the file and it is a compressed zip folder. Let's tile out the documentation. The first thing I need to do is extract this folder, and as you can see in the documentation, when I choose extract all, I am given also a folder name, which is the name of the file. If I do that, the actual file contents will end up being in desktop, bnkSEPA master, bnkSEPA master. And I don't want that. I don't want to have to double down to get to the files. So I'm going to backspace out of that and target desktop. I'm going to say show extracted files when complete, and we do that. And as you can see, this is my compressed folder, and this constitutes the files I have. In Windows Explorer, you can either see files as they are with the type being explained. The only extensions you see are those that are not known by Windows. I prefer seeing the files themselves, so I'm going to go into options and I'm going to make it more amenable to my method of working. I go into view, I will say display the full path, and I will uncheck hide extensions for known file types. I'll say apply, and suddenly I can see the extensions as well. We're now going to install the packages that bnkSEPA depends on. I'm going to open where I was, and up here I'm going to type cmd so that it automatically opens a command window in the proper directory. All I need to do now is type installer / install.cmd. You can either type it or you can copy. I press enter, and what is happening, the environment for this solution is being created, and once the environment is created, the packages that this solution depends on are being installed. If one package is not compatible with the version of Python you are using, you would get an error here, and as we stated before, you have to address it. Uninstall this version, go for an earlier version. In our case, we don't have any incompatibilities, and so we can confirm that this version of Python works. The only thing we got is a notification that pip has a new upgrade, and to run it you have the code here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to highlight here, I press Ctrl and C and Ctrl and V for the upgrade to take place. This uninstalls the older version, replacing it in this case with version 25. Having installed the solution, the last configuration that needs to take place is the setting up of the various passwords and specific settings for your needs. The file that needs to be modified is called secrets.py. Right click on that and say open with. Don't choose Python because Python will attempt to execute it, and this file needs to be edited, not executed. So we'll choose another app and we'll click on Notepad, and very importantly we'll just click on just once. Notepad opens up, and the three settings that can be changed are zip file, Excel file, and zip pass. Let's see those in context. to the diagram we looked at before. Zip file corresponds to the name of the zip file that bnkSEPA will attempt to look for. The zip file must have a password, and that is the password given here. Again, the solution, in order to open the zip file, to extract the Excel file from the zip, needs to know this password. Finally, the last setting is the name of the Excel file. Once the file is extracted from the zip file, the solution needs to know what it is looking for. I have been asked why the zip file has a password, etc. The reason for this is that when I was asked to design this initially, I was asked to put a password that would be known only to limited number of people, because they wanted, after processing, to rename this file to show the processing date, to keep a record of what has been sent. And rather than eventually end up with many files all open, they wanted a password system. And here you can set any password you want. This concludes the process to install bnkSEPA. I hope you found it useful. If you like this how-to, please like, share and subscribe, as it helps me and it helps the channel. Thank you and take care.